The delivery truck rumbled up the cracked driveway, its brakes squealing to a stop. Ben killed the engine, grabbed the stack of packages, and headed toward the old Victorian house shrouded in ivy. He'd never seen the owner, not once in the months he'd been delivering art supplies. Just a soft voice over the intercom, always thanking him, always distant. He set the packages down, gave his usual 3 knocks, and turned to leave. But this time something different caught his eye. A small, handwritten note tucked under the doormat, his name written in neat looping script. Ben. And for the first time, he felt like she was real. The rumble of the delivery truck's engine rattled the loose change in the cup holder as Ben pulled up to the edge of Hawthorne Lane. The house sat at the very end of the narrow, winding road shrouded by towering sycamores that whispered in the breeze. He checked the address again, 154 Hawthorne Lane, then squinted through his windshield at the barely visible mailbox, half swallowed by creeping ivy. Creepy, he muttered, grabbing the small stack of packages from the passenger seat. Each one was labeled with the same name, Lily Calloway. He had made this run regularly 4 months, art supplies, always art supplies, canvas rolls, tubes of oil paint, sketchbooks, and once a wooden easel that barely fit in the back of his van. But not once had he seen the woman who ordered them. Ben hopped out of the truck and crunched his way up the gravel path. The house was old Victorian style, with white paint peeling off in long curls revealing patches of gray wood beneath. Shutters hung at awkward angles and vines snaked up the latticework, gripping it like stubborn fingers. He reached the porch and set the packages down, pausing out of habit to knock 3 raps solid, polite, expected. He stepped back and waited. Silence stretched long enough for him to consider leaving, like every other time. Then there was the familiar crackle of static from the speaker just above the doorbell. "Just leave them on the porch, please," a soft voice crackled through. Ben tilted his head, stepping closer to the speaker. "You sure you don't want me to bring them in? I don't mind." A pause. Then the voice returned, a little warmer. "No, but thank you." He hesitated, glancing at the door as if it might swing open, but it didn't. It never did. He heard the slight rustle of movement from behind it, a shadow shifting behind the frosted glass pane. He wanted to ask something, anything, to pierce that invisible barrier, but all he could manage was, "Okay, have a good one." Ben made his way back to the truck, but his eyes lingered on the house until it disappeared behind a bend in the road. The next time Ben arrived with more packages, an even larger stack this time. He shuffled them onto the porch, took a step back, and knocked 3 raps solid, polite, expected. The speaker crackled. "Thank you. You can just leave them." "Hey, Ben hesitated, shuffling his feet. "You got a project going or something? Seems like you're building an art studio in there." Silence. Ben scratched the back of his neck, feeling foolish for prying. Then the speaker crackled again. "Something like that." He chuckled more at the absurdity of talking to a speaker than at her response. "Well, good luck with it." This time there was no reply. Later curiosity had dug its claws deep into Ben's mind. He had looked up the name Lily Calloway, but found nothing. No social media, no local listings, nothing but a mention of the address registered under her name. It didn't satisfy him. How could someone live so tucked away, ordering supplies religiously, and never step outside? He imagined her painting masterpieces in solitude, walls lined with canvases of colors only she could dream up. Maybe she was some kind of recluse genius, a modern-day Emily Dickinson with a paintbrush. On his next delivery, Ben took a chance. He slipped a small note beneath the bundle of packages. "Hope your project's going well. Ben, the delivery guy." He left it without knocking, certain it would go unnoticed. But the following time, as he approached the house, there was something resting atop the stack of boxes, a folded note. He picked it up, glancing around as if someone might be watching. He unfolded it carefully. "They never do, but I keep trying. Lily." Ben couldn't help the grin that spread across his face. She had written back. From then on, every delivery came with an exchange, small notes slipped between packages. Ben learned that she preferred night to day, that she painted because it was the only thing that made her feel free, and that she didn't mind being alone. He wrote back telling her about his early mornings, his knack for getting lost, even with GPS, and his secret desire to travel beyond the town's borders, though he never had the nerve. He'd always knock 3 times solid, polite, expected, and she'd always respond, her voice floating through the speaker like smoke lingering long after she was gone. One morning, as Ben made his way back to the truck, he paused and turned a question bubbling to the surface. "You ever gonna come out and say hi?" he shouted back to the door. A soft laugh floated through the speaker, breathy and unexpected. "Maybe when the sun's gone." Ben shook his head, smiling as he climbed into the driver's seat. A mystery. That's what she was, and he was hooked. On his next delivery, Ben showed up with the usual stack of art supplies, but this time there was something different. A letter tucked neatly into the top of the box, sealed with a drop of crimson wax, his name written in neat looping cursive. Ben. He turned it over in his hands, feeling the weight of its contents. Curiosity clawed at him. What had she written? And more importantly, why now? The letter rested on Ben's dashboard for days before he finally found the nerve to open it. He'd never gotten a handwritten letter before, not in his 26 years. Bills, sure. Flyers, definitely. But a letter carefully penned and sealed. That felt like something out of another era. When he finally did crack the seal, the wax split neatly in two, leaving a crimson stain across his fingertips. He unfolded the thick parchment, the scent of lavender drifting up from the page. "Ben, thank you for the deliveries and the notes. I don't get much company these days. I suppose I never really did. I'm not good with people. I'm not sure I ever was. But I wanted to say that I appreciate your kindness. I hope you know it matters. Lily." Ben read it twice, then again, the weight of her words settling in his chest. He leaned back in his seat, eyes drifting up to the canopy of branches above. It was strange how someone he'd never even seen could feel so familiar. The next time he came prepared. After stacking the art supplies on the porch and giving his usual 3 raps on the door, he pulled out a note of his own, folded carefully, and scrawled with his hurried handwriting. "I don't know if I'm good with people either, but I'd like to try." He tucked it under the edge of the canvas rolls, brushing dust off his hands before stepping back. The intercom crackled as usual. "Thank you, Ben." He smiled at the sound of his name. "You got it, Lily." The next delivery, there was no letter. Ben couldn't help but feel a twinge of disappointment. It was silly she didn't owe him anything. Still, as he climbed back into his truck, he hesitated. It wasn't just curiosity anymore. It was something deeper, something he couldn't quite name. He grabbed his phone and typed out a quick message. "You don't have to write back, just wanted you to know you got a friend out here." He left the note taped to the top of her package and drove off before he could second-guess it. Days turned to weeks, and the pattern continued. She never responded in writing, but her voice grew warmer over the intercom, more familiar. Sometimes she even lingered for a few seconds longer than necessary. "Do you paint every day?" he asked one day, his hand resting on the wooden railing of her porch. "I tried to," she replied, her voice a little breathy, like she'd just climbed stairs. It's the only time I feel like I'm somewhere else. Somewhere else, somewhere I can breathe," she said softly, almost a whisper. The words hung heavy in the air. Ben wanted to press further, to ask why she couldn't just step outside and breathe right here. But something in her voice, fragile and guarded, stopped him. "Where do you paint?" he asked instead. "By the window," she replied, "where the light is best." It became a ritual. Ben would leave her supplies and knock 3 times and then lean against the porch railing for a chat. Sometimes it lasted a few minutes, sometimes just seconds. But every conversation pulled back another layer of the mystery that was Lily Calloway. He learned that she loved Impressionism, particularly Monet and Renoir, that she drank lavender tea every morning, and that she'd once dreamed of studying art in Paris. He even learned that she played piano badly by her own admission, but that it made her feel alive. "What about you?" she asked one day, her voice crackling through the speaker. "What do you dream about?" Ben scratched his head, leaning back against the porch. "I don't know," he replied honestly. "Getting out of this town, maybe. Seeing something other than these same old streets." She laughed. "Then why don't you—" He laughed, though there was no humor in it. "I guess it's just easier to stay put." Her voice softened. "Easier isn't always better. Sometimes the hardest things are the ones worth doing." The line went dead before he could respond. He stood there for a while, hands in his pockets, thinking about her words. One time, the first real crack in her armor appeared. Ben arrived to find the packages still sitting on the porch untouched from the week before. He frowned, checking his phone for a missed delivery alert. Nothing. He climbed the porch steps and knocked 3 times like always. No response. He knocked again, this time louder. Silence. His heart began to hammer in his chest. "Lily," he called, leaning toward the intercom. "You all right?" Nothing, not even the faintest whisper of static. Ben's hand hovered over the doorbell. He pressed it, listening to the echo chime through the house. Still nothing. He tried the knob. Locked, of course. He stepped back, glancing at the window, but the curtains were pulled tightly shut. He pulled out his phone, his thumb hovering over the call button. He didn't even have her number. His mind raced with possibilities, illness, injury, worse. "Lily," he shouted, banging on the door, now abandoning all pretense of politeness. "Are you in there?" There was a long pause, just long enough for dread to settle into his bones. Then the intercom crackled. "Ben." Her voice was barely a whisper, hoarse and strained. He exhaled sharply, relief crashing through him. Yeah, I'm here." "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," she replied, though her voice wavered. "I just had a bad week." Ben bit his lip, unsure how to tread. "Do you need anything I can grab, groceries or medicine?" No, I'm fine." Her voice was firmer now, but there was an edge to it. "Thank you, though." He hesitated, his hand still pressed against the intercom button. "All right, but if you need anything at all, I know where to find you," she finished for him. There was a soft click as the line went dead, and Ben stood there for a long while, his breath frosting in the crisp morning air. He stared at the house, at the drawn curtains and ivy-covered walls, and wondered what kind of ghosts lived inside. The next time the packages were gone from the porch, he almost didn't believe it at first, thinking he must have come to the wrong house. But no, there was the broken shingle he always avoided and the familiar creak of the wooden step beneath his boots. He knocked, his heart fluttering in his chest. She answered on the first rap. "Thank you for the delivery." He exhaled, tension leaving his shoulders. "Good to hear your voice," he said, letting the words tumble out. He heard her chuckle softly through the speaker. "I'm still here," she replied. And for the first time, Ben believed it. The following week, Ben arrived with the usual stack of supplies, but this time there was something different. A package carefully wrapped in brown paper with his name written across the top in delicate looping script. Ben. He lifted it from the pile, inspecting it from all angles. It was light, but something firm rested inside. He glanced back at the door, then down at the package. Whatever it was, it felt like the beginning of an answer. The package felt heavier than it should have, not by weight, but by consequence. Ben carried it to his truck and set it gently on the passenger seat, his hands lingering on the coarse brown paper. His name, scrawled in looping cursive, stared back at him, daring him to open it. For a long moment, he simply sat there, engine off, fingers drumming the steering wheel. Finally, he tore the paper, carefully revealing a flat wooden frame beneath. It was wrapped in soft linen, the corners neatly folded. He peeled the fabric back, his breath catching when he saw what lay beneath. It was a painting. Vibrant strokes of color spilled across the canvas, a chaotic, yet deliberate, a scene of the old Victorian house, but not the way it looked now. This version was alive, radiant. The white paint was pristine, the shutters straightened, flowers blossoming along the porch rail. He could almost feel the sunlight warming the shingles, the breeze stirring the hanging ferns. It was perfect. At the bottom, in tiny letters, it read, "For the friend who brings color to my doorstep. Lily." Ben swallowed hard, his eyes lingering on the painted window panes. They were thrown open, white curtains billowing outward as if greeting the world. He stared at it, absorbing every detail, every brushstroke that spoke of hope and possibility. He set the painting gently back on the seat, his mind spinning with questions. The house had never looked like that, not in all the months he'd been coming. And the windows, they were always shut, always. He started the engine and pulled away from the curb, but the image clung to him. He couldn't shake the feeling that the painting wasn't just a thank you. It was a glimpse of something deeper, of what Lily wanted her world to be, or maybe what it used to be. The next time Ben arrived with more packages, he unloaded them onto the porch, his eyes drifting to the windows, now draped with heavy curtains. He knocked 3 times, solid, polite, expected. The speaker crackled. "Thank you, Ben. Got your painting," he replied, his hand still resting on the wood of the porch railing. "It's beautiful." A pause, then her voice soft and distant. I'm glad you liked it. It looks different than the real thing. He continued, his words careful probing. Like it used to be brighter. Another pause, this one longer. He wondered if she would shut him out if he'd pushed too far. But then she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. It was. The intercom went silent, and Ben stood there for a moment, absorbing the weight of her words. He wanted to press further, to ask what happened, but something held him back. He could feel her pulling away, even through the thick wooden door and static-laced speaker. All right, well, until next week. He stepped back, hands in his pockets. Until next week, she replied, and then the line clicked off. Ben couldn't get it out of his head, the way she had said. It was as if those two words carried a lifetime of stories. He found himself standing at her gate one night, just staring up at the windows. No light seeped through, no flicker of movement behind the curtains, just silence. On a whim, he stopped at the local library the next morning. It was old, dusty, smelling faintly of coffee and aged paper. He found the local archives in the basement, newspapers stacked in crooked piles, yellowed and fraying at the edges. He sifted through them, pulling out articles that mentioned 154 Hawthorne Lane. And then he found it. Local artist honored at City Gala. A photograph of Lily was printed in black and white. She was younger, brighter. Her hair was longer, tied back in a loose braid, and she wore a floral dress that flared at the waist. She was smiling, holding a canvas in her hands, surrounded by people applauding. Beneath the photograph, the caption read, "Local artist Lily Calloway honored for her charitable contributions through art auctions." He flipped through more papers, digging deeper. She had been well known, a rising star in the local art community. Her works had been displayed at local galleries, even in the state capitol. But then the article stopped, just ended like she'd vanished. His gut twisted. Something had happened. The next delivery, Ben showed up with a sense of determination he hadn't felt before. He knocked 3 times, solid, polite, expected. The speaker crackled. "Thank you, Ben. Can I ask you something?" His voice was firm, steady. He heard her hesitate. "Okay. What happened?" Silence, Rita Marie. He thought she might disconnect, that he'd crossed the invisible line she'd drawn between them. But then her voice came back, softer, almost a whisper. "What do you mean you used to be?" "Well, I found some old newspaper clippings. You used to do galleries, charity work, but then it just stopped." There was no response, just the hum of static. "Lily, what happened?" he pressed gently. She exhaled slowly, the sound crackling through the speaker. "Life happened, Ben. That's not an answer." His words were softer now, almost pleading. A pause. "You really want to know?" "Yes." The intercom went silent for so long he thought she'd shut it off. But then the speaker crackled again. "Come back tomorrow. Midnight." He barely slept that night. He arrived 10 minutes early, his breath visible in the cold air. The porch light flickered on as he approached, casting a long shadow across the worn wooden boards. He knocked 3 times, more out of habit than necessity. The door creaked open, not fully, just a crack enough for him to see a sliver of her face. Her eyes were green, startlingly bright against the pale glow of her skin. She looked tired, shadows pooling beneath her eyes, but there was a fierceness there too, a stubbornness that refused to fade. "Come in," she whispered. Ben stepped inside and the door shut behind him with a soft click. The air smelled like paint and lavender. The walls were lined with canvases, half-finished works of sprawling fields, starry skies, faces of people he didn't recognize. She led him down a narrow hallway, her footsteps light and deliberate. They reached a room at the far end, the door already ajar. Ben stepped inside and stopped cold. Paintings, hundreds of them, stacked against the walls, leaning on easels scattered across the floor. It was as if the world outside had been captured and stored here, preserved in bright colors and careful strokes. "I haven't left the house in years," she said from behind him. Her voice was softer now, almost a whisper. "Not since the accident." Ben turned, his brow creasing. "Accident?" She nodded, eyes drifting to a painting of a car-crushed metal-broken glass. It was stunning and brutal, rendered in shades of gray and crimson. "Drunk driver. I was on my way back from a gallery opening. My fiancée was driving." Her voice cracked. "He didn't make it." Ben's hands tightened into fists at his sides. "Lily, I'm so sorry." Her eyes met his, sharp and resolute. I survived, but I haven't been able to leave. Not since that night. Silence stretched long and heavy between them. Finally, Ben spoke, his voice firm. Maybe you don't have to leave. Maybe the world comes to you. She blinked, confusion flickering across her face. What do you mean? Ben turned back to the paintings, eyes scanning the hundreds of captured moments. Let me show people your work. Let me bring the gallery to you. Her eyes shimmered with something that looked like hope, fragile and fleeting. You'd do that, he met her gaze unwavering. I would. Lily's hands trembled as she reached out, brushing her fingers over the edge of the nearest canvas. For the first time in years, she imagined her art in the sunlight, not just behind glass, but out there breathing with the world. And in that moment, the miracle she'd been waiting for began to take shape. Ben and Lily's story unveils a powerful lesson. Small, persistent acts of connection can break through even the deepest isolation. Lily, confined by grief and fear after a tragic accident, hid from the world, her only lifeline, the art supplies Ben delivered. His simple notes, his willingness to linger and listen through a crackling intercom, slowly drew her back toward hope. This teaches us that reaching out, even in the smallest ways, can touch lives we may never fully see. Ben's curiosity and care transformed a routine delivery into a bridge, showing that healing begins when someone refuses to let another remain unseen. In a world that often rushes past pain, this story urges us to pause, to notice those who've withdrawn, and to offer kindness without expecting answers. Lily's painting, a vibrant vision of her home reborn, reminds us that beauty and hope can emerge from brokenness when nurtured by compassion. Let's be the Ben in someone's story, patient, present, and unafraid to knock. Have you ever reached out to someone who seemed distant and made a difference? Share your experience in the comments. I'd love to hear your stories. If this moved you, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to join our community of heartfelt storytellers. Let's keep inspiring each other to bring color to the world's quiet corners.